March 1839, Canton. A Chinese official steps off a boat. His name is Lin Zexu, and he's about to do something that will start a war. His mission? Stop the opium trade, whatever it takes. Sounds heroic, right? Well, wait for it. Lin Zexu doesn't waste time. The moment he arrives in Canton, he goes straight for the throat. He surrounds the foreign factories, these compounds where British merchants live and work, basically puts them under house arrest. His message is simple: hand over your opium. All of it, every single chest. The British merchants panic. We're talking about 20,000 chests of opium here. That's worth millions. Their entire business is on the line. They try to negotiate. Maybe we can work something out? Gradual phase out? Compensation? Lin's response: you have 3 days. And he's not bluffing. He cuts off their food supplies, surrounds the compound with troops, threatens to execute Chinese workers who help them. The British are trapped. No way out. No reinforcements coming. Charles Elliot, the British government's chief representative in China, makes a decision. He tells the merchants, hand it over. All of it. I'll take responsibility. Why? Because technically, once Elliot takes possession, it becomes British government property, which means Lin Zexu just seized property from the British Crown. That's going to be important later, so the opium gets handed over. 20,000 chests, 1,400 tons, the biggest drug bust in history. And then Lin does something dramatic. He destroys it. All of it. June 1839. Humen Beach, near Canton. Lin Zexu orders the construction of massive trenches. Workers dig 3 huge pools, pour in seawater, throw in the opium, add lime to break it down chemically. It takes 23 days to destroy everything. Imagine the scene: smoke rising from the beach, the smell of burning opium drifting across the water, crowds watching. This is China saying, enough. Lin writes a prayer to the sea god, apologizing for polluting the ocean. He's very concerned about the fish. It's this perfect moment of moral authority. China standing up to foreign drug dealers. One man doing the right thing. Except, remember what we talked about in episode 1? This isn't really about saving Chinese people from addiction. Look at what Lin writes to the emperor. He doesn't talk about public health. He doesn't talk about families destroyed by drugs. He talks about silver, the currency drain, the economic threat. His argument to the emperor is basically, if we don't stop this, we'll run out of money. And that proposal from other officials to just grow Chinese opium instead of importing it, that's still on the table. Lin rejected it, but barely. So yeah, Lin's burning the opium. It looks heroic. But the motivation? Follow the money. Still, in that moment, it doesn't matter. China feels powerful, righteous. They stood up to the foreigners and won. Lin even writes a letter to Queen Victoria. It's this beautiful mix of condescension and logic. He points out that opium is illegal in Britain. So why are you selling it to us? You don't allow it in your own country, so you obviously know it's harmful. Yet you profit from harming ours? It's actually a pretty good argument. Victoria never responds, probably never even sees the letter. But someone does respond. The British merchants, the East India Company, the traders who just lost their entire inventory. And they are pissed. London, late 1839. The news reaches Britain. China seized and destroyed British property, millions of pounds worth. The merchants want blood, or at least compensation, preferably both. They go to Parliament, they argue, this is an outrage. China violated international law. We demand military action. And here's where it gets interesting, because there's actually a debate. Some British politicians are uncomfortable. A young MP named William Gladstone, who will later become Prime Minister, stands up and says, "A war more unjust in its origin, A war calculated to cover this country with permanent disgrace, I do not know. He literally calls it a drug war. He points out that Britain is about to go to war to force another country to accept British opium. The vote happens. Should Britain go to war with China? The result? 271 to 262. 9 votes. That's it. 9 votes, and one of the most shameful wars in British history almost doesn't happen. But it does happen. The British government frames it differently, of course. They don't call it the Opium War. They call it a war for free trade and diplomatic dignity. China disrespected Britain. China violated treaties. China seized British property. The opium? That's just incidental. The fleet is assembled. State-of-the-art warships, steam-powered gunboats, modern artillery. They set sail for China. And China? China has no idea what's coming. July 1840. The British fleet arrives off the Chinese coast. The Chinese military sees them and thinks, we can handle this. After all, China has numbers, thousands of soldiers, hundreds of war junks, coastal fortifications. And honestly, the Qing dynasty still thinks of itself as the dominant power in Asia. Barbarians from across the ocean? Please. Then the shooting starts, and it's not even close. Chinese war junks, wooden sailing ships versus British steam-powered gunboats with rotating cannons. Chinese soldiers with matchlock muskets and swords versus British troops with rifles and artillery. Chinese coastal forts with old cannons versus British ships with precision naval guns that can hit targets from miles away. It's not a war. It's target practice. At the Battle of Chuenpi, British ships destroy 15 Chinese war junks in less than an hour. Chinese casualties, hundreds. British casualties, 0. Literally 0. The British strategy is simple. Sail up the coast, blockade ports, destroy any ships that resist, demand surrender. Chinese commanders keep sending reports back to Beijing. The barbarians have fire ships that move without wind. Their cannons have incredible range. Our weapons can't reach them. The emperor doesn't believe it. He thinks his generals are making excuses. He orders them to fight harder. So they try. They really do. At Ningbo, Chinese troops mount a brave defense. They're outnumbered and outgunned, but they hold their positions. British artillery just flattens the fortifications. The Chinese retreat. More casualties. At Wusong, Chinese generals try a night attack. Maybe they can board the British ships in the dark. The British have rockets, Congreve rockets. They light up the night and turn the attack into a massacre. It goes on like this for 2 years. Not because the fighting is difficult, but because China keeps refusing to accept reality. Keep refusing to surrender. The British don't even need to invade inland. They just control the coast, block trade, strangle the economy. By 1842, British gunboats are sitting outside Nanjing, one of China's most important cities, pointing their cannons at the city walls. China has no choice left. They surrender. So let's recap what just happened. China tried to enforce its own laws on its own territory, stop a drug epidemic, protect its economy. Britain responded by sending warships to force China to accept British drugs. China fought back and got absolutely crushed, not because Chinese soldiers weren't brave, not because Chinese commanders weren't trying, but because technologically it wasn't even competitive. China was still using weapons from the 1600s. Britain had steam engines and modern artillery. It's like bringing a sword to a drone strike. And here's the thing, China didn't see it coming. The Qing court genuinely believed they were the superior civilization, the Middle Kingdom. Everyone else were barbarians. That confidence gets shattered in about 2 years. But here's the really dark part. Both sides claimed moral superiority. Britain said, "We're defending free trade. China broke the rules. We're teaching them a lesson about international law." China said, "We're defending our sovereignty. We're stopping drug dealers. We're protecting our people." Neither side admits the truth. Britain was protecting drug profits. China was protecting silver reserves. Neither side was the good guy. It was a war over money, and the side with better guns won. The question is, what happens next? What does Britain demand? What does China lose? And how does this one war change everything? Next time, the treaties that broke an empire, the clauses that shaped 150 years of history, and the question, could it happen again? See you in episode 3.